There are loads of writing apps out there, but I personally use Obsidian for my short form and long form writing, as it's a free application with so much extensibility that you almost have unlimited options for customization. I've created a book writing vault, which is essentially a big folder on my computer which can contain all of my projects. I'm going to go through a couple of workflows inside of Obsidian to get you started, but like I say, you can move in so many different directions. By going to the top left, making sure I'm in the Files core plugin, I'm going to push on the New Note button and it's going to create a file. I'm going to title it Outline, and now I can write my outline in here. I can use bullet points. We've got Act 1, 2, 3 with nested bullet points in. Maybe you want headers, in which case push hash for heading 1, space, and then the heading, and then do the same for the next one. Then go over to the right side and open up the right sidebar, so expand that, and then at the top you can see outline of outline. That's the outline of the outline file, and you can see there's the 3 headings that we've added, and when I click on it, it takes me to that heading. So this is like a table of contents that works for each file. Maybe this is a short story, so I'm going to write everything in one file. I've got part 1 as a heading 1 and chapter 1 of part 1 as a heading 2, and you can see that's shown in the outline. And moving down, we've got chapter 1, chapter 2 underneath part 1, and then part 2, heading 1, chapter 3, chapter 4. Then, if maybe I want to change things around, so chapter 3 is actually going to be in part 1, I can drag it in the outline, drag it up, and move it into part 1. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, then part 2, and chapter 4. Maybe you want to have an outline file and a writing file. So I'm going to go back to this tab that we had to start with, create a new file, call it script. You can see now in the Files core plugin, we have an outline file and a script file, all on the same book. So I'm going to create a folder. Push enter, and now I'm going to drag the outline and the script into the folder. So essentially I have a project with the outline, script, and this is where you can start mimicking things from other writing tools. Scrivener's one that comes to mind. So when I right click, go new note, research, and then as Obsidian is based on panels, so we can see this workspace, we've got the left sidebar, right sidebar, and we have 2 tabs in one panel or pane. I actually want to see the outline and script at the same time, so I can click on the tab, go to the right, and now I've split the screen. I'm then going to hold Control on my keyboard and left click on Research, which opens Research up as a new pane and tab. I'm going to drag this down, so now I can see Research and Script with the outline on the side. And I'm going to highlight all of this, cut, and then paste, nice and simple, just like every other word processor, cut, copy, paste into the script. So now if I click inside of the script, you can see there's part 1, part 2, and all the chapters. When I click in outline, it's got Act 1, 2, 3. I know some people that use Scrivener and use other writing tools like to focus in on whatever chapter it is they're writing. So if I want to focus on chapter 1, for example, but it's all in this one file, I have 2 options really. The first option is to create a new file. So new note, chapter 1, and then I write the chapter 1 inside of this file, and then I can show that inside of the script. So I have chapter 1, which is where I'm writing. Then I've got part 1, chapter 1 inside of the script. I'm going to remove this line, and then I'm going to link chapter 1. So 2 square brackets, chapter 1. And now I've created a link to chapter 1. I can then show it by putting an exclamation mark at the start. So now I've got chapter 1 transcluded. It's a technical word that basically means it's being shown inside of this script. So I've got chapter 1 being written in this file and shown inside the script. Then any changes made to this chapter, so adding a change, will also change it inside of the script. However, there's no way to edit it inside of the script, but you can go to the link, so open link, and it opens up that chapter for writing. The other option is to use something called a community plugin. So bottom left settings, go to community plugins, and then I'm going to turn on community plugins. And these are code scripts that have been checked by the Obsidian team, built by the community, that are installed on the device that you're using. So browse, and Zoom is the plugin I'm going to use here, but there are 900 plus plugins to explore and use. So install, enable. If I click on options, you can now see I'm back in the settings and it's down in the community plugins option. And this plugin literally lets you zoom in when clicking on the bullet or heading. So I'm in the script file, and if I look at chapter 1, there's no button. If I right click again, there's still no button to zoom in. However, If I go to the ribbon on the left side, go down to the bottom, you can see Open Command Palette. There is a keyboard hotkey as well, which is Control P. And inside this command palette, if I type zoom, I can zoom in and zoom out of the app, which are default options. But we also have this zoom community plugin hotkey, and this one as well, which lets me zoom in. So that's Control, comma, and zoom out, Control Shift, comma. If I put my cursor on the chapter 1 heading and push that hotkey, Control, comma, it will zoom me in. So you can see I'm in script, Part 1, Chapter 1, and that's where I'm zoomed into. If I go to Part 1, it's now going to show me just Part 1, go to Script, and now it's Part 1 and Part 2. And you can do this with as many headings as you want, all the way to a level 6 heading. So you can have 6 different levels of heading, and then zoom in and zoom out of any of those levels, which gives you a lot of flexibility. Going into the outline, you get the same option with bullet points. So I'm currently in this Act 1 bullet point. I'm using that hotkey, and now I'm in Outline, Act 1, and it's showing me just these bullet points. Then, just like as you would expect, when I add the point inside of this outline, it's added it to the original file, so there's no changes there. Looking at the ribbon again on the left side, the third one down in the default is Create New Canvas. And when I click on this, it gives me this canvas, this unlimited canvas. I'm going to name it Canvas for the moment, and you can see it's created it outside of the book folder, so I'm going to drag it into the book folder. And this is like mind mapping, so you can drag a new card in. This is a blank card, it's not directed anywhere, and you can just start typing away for ideas. You can drag a media element in, which could be a video, a picture, or anything like that. So if you've got characters, maybe you want to drag and bring in the images for the character in here. And then you also get the option to drag any note from the vault. So if I drag up here, it then gives me the option between these notes. Alternatively, to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to drag the script in from the files and plonk it straight in. So now I can see the script, and I can edit the script inside of this canvas mind map-esque view. And clicking on this card, I'm going to delete it, move this one over, hold Control on my keyboard, and then drag, click with the mouse, let go of click, and now I've duplicated this card. Right click, narrow to heading, and I'm going to narrow to Part 1, and now it's only showing me Part 1 inside of this card. And right click, narrow to heading, Part 2, and now only being shown Part 2 of this card. So you could be parts or chapters or subchapters, maybe have characters, details, outlines. You can add anything inside of this canvas, and if I zoom out, it goes very, very fast. So you can map out your entire story, your novels, everything inside of this canvas, giving you the ability to add colors. So when you click on a card, you can then add a color. Alternatively, you could highlight both cards, you can align them, you can group them. So maybe you have a group of technology or a group of magic or a group of ideas for science, research, anything like that. So you can have a color group, say this is the red color group, and then inside of here we have 2 parts, and these are both going to be yellow for whatever reason. So you can map this out, make it look any way you want, all with the ability to, when you click into, then add text. So I'm adding words in chapter 4, then if I bring up the script, so if I control click on script, brings up as a new tab, drag this over, you can see in chapter 4, adding words. So if I hold middle click on my mouse and drag, I can move the canvas, go back into chapter 4, and then remove this adding words line. It will disappear from the canvas as well because they are linked. Going into the settings and having a look at the core plugins, we can type word count, and you can see there is a word count core plugin which counts the amount of words inside of a file and puts it in the status bar down the bottom right. So currently inside of this script we have 218 characters and 34 words. However, if I highlight just this sentence, it doesn't show me the word count, and this is where community plugins can come in handy. And so, better word count, install, enable, options, and there are other options inside of better word count than just changing it, so we can collect some statistics, so daily word count, page word count. We can also change some of the things shown in the status bar, and we can look at words, characters, sentences, footnotes, citations, pages, and files inside of Obsidian. So that could be a project, that could be the entire vault. It's up to you, because it lets you look through the current note, a daily metric, or total in vault. And then you can customize the shows, so prefix text is text that's placed before the count, and suffix text is words after. So we've got words being put after the metric of words in the current note. And then for this one, we have the metric counter of characters in the current note with characters after the number. And you can add more and more items to this or reset them all the way back to default. And then there's the alternative status bar. So when you're not editing a markdown file in, for example, the canvas view, it will then show this status bar, which you could use for file counters, or what I personally do is go words, total in Vault, and change that to daily metrics. So this is a daily word count of all the words that I've written. And then I'll change the suffix text to words. And now down the bottom we can see two different versions. One of them, when I highlight this text, changes. So we've got 5 words highlighted with 28 characters, and this one is the core plugin. You could keep them both there, but my preference is to remove the core plugin because better word count does a better job. So core plugins, word count, and then toggle it off. But the main drawback of using one file or a couple of files inside of a folder is that it becomes very hard to navigate very large projects. And this is where the second workflow comes in. So community plugins, browse, and the Longform plugin. Install, enable, options, and there are loads of settings in here which we will go through very slowly. But if we jump out, you can see there is another icon in this sidebar. We have the search core plugin, the bookmarks for bookmarking a section, a heading, a file, a block, or anything like that. And then we have Longform. And this is a different version of the files core plugin we were using a second ago. So I'm going to drag the files down so we can still see what's going on, but we can also see Longform. Now looking at the settings, you can see show scene numbers inside the scene tab. So if I tick this on, we'll see the scene numbers, but in order to show that, we actually need a project. So for this example, I'm going to create a new folder, call it Longform, and then I'm going to right click, and you see create Longform project. And this is where we get two options, a single file project or a multi-file project. So we're going to go single to start with, single project create, and what it's done is created a single file project, and it's created a file called single project and added some information at the top of this file to essentially tell Longform what's going on. And now you can see in the Longform tab all of the information of the project. So the same principles apply. If I add a heading inside of this file, we have an introduction, main story, conclusion, and it shows up in the outline panel on the right side. We can move that way we want, but we also see project 4 words. So the Longform project plugin is also counting the words per project. So you can see we've got 8 words inside this project. Now in the bottom right, we have 16 words, 25 characters, and then 8 words for the project. The 16 words is including all of these words, and that's the better word count plugin, whereas the project is looking at just the words inside of the file. But as this is a single project, there is only one scene inside of the Longform project, so there's no numbers that can be shown, which means we need a multi-file Longform project. So right click, create Longform project, multi-project, and create, and it's done the same thing, but it's created a folder with an index file inside of it. And the index file has all of that information for Longform to look at. So you can see format scenes, title, multi-project, because that's the title, workflow, default, we'll go through that in a second, scene folder, that's where the scenes are going to be stored, name the scenes, and then ignored files. But we also have in the Longform tab, scenes. So adding an introduction, enter. And now you can see there's the one, introduction, and what it's done is it's added a file inside of the folder, main story, enter. And now we have another file inside of the folder, and that is scene 2. So going back into the settings, if I turn this toggle off, you can see in the background the numbers have disappeared. Turn this on, it now reappears. I keep this on because if I want the main story there, and I add 2 scenes underneath it, one's in the hill and one's in the castle, I can see 2-1, 2-2, and that's ordered them inside of the panel, and I don't have to worry about that inside of the files plugin, because, I mean, I don't know what's going on here, and it could get massive if you've got 30 plus chapters. And where this information is stored is inside of that index file, and you can see here it is, introduction, main story, hill, and castle. The compile step I'll go through in a second, but underneath we then have the word count and session counts, and this does exactly what it says. You can show the word count in the status bar, that's the word count down the bottom, which you can turn on or off. Start a new writing session, so it will count the words that you've written for a project, and you can turn that on or off to default start on a new day. there is a session word count goal. So if we come out of the settings, click project, you can see the word count goal is currently 500 and we've got 0 inside of the project so far. So if we go to the single project, we change the long form from multi-project to single project. Have a look, we've got one word typed because I just typed a word. If we go A, B, you can see it's adding words to the file and it's adding words to the word count because deleting the words and then adding it again. A, B, I've already typed A and B, so it's only staying at 2. If I then go to C, it's now going to change to 3 because I've now added 3 words to the file. This goal can apply to words written across all the projects, each project individually, or each scene, etc, etc. I personally don't use these because I do writing in lots of different projects all over the place, so it just makes sense to use better word count because it does the job anyway. But you may want a little notification, which this plugin does give you. I'm personally not that fast. I know how many words I'm writing and how many words I've written, but it's something that you may want to use. You can remove words from the count using the count deletion, so you can tick that, and then when you delete words, it will remove the number from the goal rather than it staying at 3. When I delete the C, it would go back to 2, but again, I don't use this much. Then we've got the sessions to keep, so this is just a log of how many sessions it will keep, and that will keep it in the long form settings, so you don't have to worry about it, which is my preference. But if we go back to the index file of the multi-project, change this to the multi-project, we now have the scenes all in here, we have the project in here, but maybe we want to use a draft, and I only draft multi-projects because single projects are really small, they're just one file, so I can push on the plus button. I then want to copy all scenes because I want all of the different scenes, so all of those chapters to be copied over, and this can be version 1. And you can see you are creating a new draft with copied scenes from your current draft, which is this one. So create. Now when I look, I'm in version 1, and if I click up, you can see the word count has changed, the goal has changed because this is a draft. Version 1 is a different draft, so there's 0 words in this project so far because we've got version 1 as a new folder, so we've got multi-project, and then version 1 is a new draft of this multi-project. Castle, Hill, Index, Introduction, Main Story, they've all been copied over. So I now have an introduction inside of version 1 and an introduction inside of multi-project, and I can put them side by side, and this is where I would do my comparison writing. And of course, because of draft is essentially just a new folder, you can have as many drafts as you want. You could have 23 drafts with all the different versions of chapters, or just have a version for certain chapters. If you want to do a chapter over and over again, you can instead push the plus button and then just copy a specific file. And now having added a few words to each of these scenes, introduction, you can see down the bottom we've got 4 words in the scene, 15 words in the project. Go across, we got 4 words in the scene, 15 in the project, and then we've got 7 words in this scene and 15 words still in the project, which shows inside the Longform plugin as well if you want to see it over there rather than bottom right. And then at the end, you can compile all of these files into one. So push the compile button. I'm going to drag the files over here so you can see everything that's going on. And this is where you can customize the configuration to whatever publishing specs you need, formatting, etc., etc. This can get as complicated as you want, so maybe you want to grab some help on that for using JavaScript files to do some really complicated things, or use Pandoc or something else like that. But at the end of the day, it's just a file. So strip the front matter. If you're using front matter, most people won't need to. Remove links, which I'll go through in a minute. Prepend text, which is basically just adding the scenes together. Concatenate the text, which joins all of these files together one after the other, and then save as a note, which makes it into a note, and at the moment it's called manuscript.md. You can add a step, but we're just going to leave it at the default because that's all you really need. Compile, and you see it's made a manuscript file in Longform version 1, and there's the first scene, the second scene, the third scene, and the fourth scene. Where Obsidian for me starts to become really powerful is when you start using its other features, and there are loads of them, but the main one that I use, so I'm going to create a new folder, I'm going to call it information, I'm going to add a couple of files in. So I've added 2 characters, myself and John, my podcast co-host, and then a location at London. And when I'm writing inside of the story, I can link these together. So Danny and John were in London for a nice trip, and because I've linked them, I can actually look at the information in the file while I'm writing. So if there's information inside of this file I need, for example, John is a human, Danny is a cyborg, and I can't remember which one's which, I can see it straight away, because I can hold control and just look at the file. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to go to the settings, go to the page preview core plugin, and actually in the editing view turn this off. So I don't need to hold control, I can just hover over the link and it shows me Danny is a cyborg, John is a human, okay, we're safe. This means I can keep character information inside of a character file, location information inside of a location file, and all the information inside of its specific spaces, but when I'm writing the story, I don't lose any context because I can quickly jump straight in. Then when I go to the character file in the backlinks, so at the moment it's in the side panel, you can see exactly where I've used myself inside of the story. It's currently in the main story. Maybe inside of the castle scene, John is the king of the castle, and I can't remember when I'm inside of my characters who is the king of the castle. I can go on to Danny, nope, Danny's in the main story, go to John, oh wait, John's in the main story, but he's also in the castle, and I can see John is the king of the castle. Now, for convenience, I prefer to keep these collapsed so I can only see the file name rather than the context, so when I have loads of chapters, I only have to expand the chapter that I'm looking at rather than seeing everything, because when you say names, they appear quite a lot. And the other thing is I'm going to go to Settings, go to the Backlinks Core Plugin Settings, and Backlink in Documents. So I'm going to tick that on. I'm going to close everything down because Obsidian needs to update, and now I have the backlinks at the bottom of the file. If I bring some of these back up again, you can see at the bottom of the file, all of the links, all of those backlinks that were in this side pane are now at the bottom, so I can scroll down and see what's going on. And again, I can search for this, which is really nice, so I can see the file, see the scene, see the settings, see the plot that this person is involved in. And just for confirmation, you can see remove links is the second part of the compile of the default compile. So when I compile this again, you can see inside the manuscript, we have the new manuscript, but where I've said Danny, John, they are all just words rather than the links that you actually see inside of the scenes. I am just brushing the surface with Obsidian here, but hopefully it's given you a bit of insight as to why I use Obsidian over things like Scrivener, Microsoft Word, and Google Docs.